Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by Hollis, Wright & Couch, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts. The attorneys with Josh Wright from the Hollis, Wright & Couch Law Firm and host David Lamb.
Hello and welcome into The Attorneys. Appreciate you making time for us on this Sunday evening. You know, in our lifetimes, possibly our biggest investment is going to be in our homes. So how to do that right? What are your legal rights? That's the topic of conversation tonight, and we want to invite you to be a part. There are ways you can call, text, email, even during the show to get your questions to us for our panel of experts, led, as is often the case, by Josh Wright of the firm.
You had a great week.
Yeah.
You hit it on the head on the intro there. This is going to be the biggest asset that most people will ever own in their life. And you want to make sure from the process of investigating whether or not you're going to buy a home to the process of purchasing the home and the closing and thereafter, those are all important topics. And when we run into these type topics, we go to experts in the field. And one of the experts in the field is here today, Luke Henderson. Luke's got his own firm in Birmingham, and what he specializes in is the home closing process. What he also specializes in is walking people and kind of lead guiding, directing people and through the entire process from start to finish on what you need to do to make sure that you've got good title to your home, that you own your home, and that you bought a good home that's a smart investment for you. So Luke, thank you so much for being on today and answering questions.
Thank y'all for having me. One of the fun things about this type of law is it's a happy type of law. People are looking to buy a home, looking to sell a home. Right. Most times as an attorney you deal with their actual problems. Here we're looking at this is what you want and how to avoid problems. So it's a fun topic.
What's the biggest thing you see in somebody comes in and says, I want to buy a home? Is it lack of understanding of the process? Is that the biggest issue, or what do you normally see?
It's pretty much that or lack of thinking through the process. And so very much so, I don't know, you always get these phone calls, I do, I just did this, this, and this, and it all went bad. And you go, well, why didn't you talk to me or talk to a realtor or talk to a professional in the industry to figure out how you should approach it instead of looking back in hindsight?
Your practice primarily is focused on this home closing process?
Yes, real estate closings.
And I would imagine that's a very busy, probably busier years past than it is right now, but slowly but surely it sounds like the market's starting to turn around a little bit.
Yeah, things are starting to get better, and so it's nice to finally see a change, an improvement that is.
Is oftentimes whenever you get back to where the mistakes are made, you've heard this advice, all kinds of advice about purchasing a home, and don't fall in love with the home, first, kind of the emotions. Yeah. Oftentimes, is that what kind of leads folks to trouble?
Pretty much so.
By emotions?
I think it's like the human desire to, I love this house, now let me see if I can afford it, instead of going first to go, well, let me look at my own finances, what can I afford, and then talking to a mortgage loan officer, hey, let's look at my income, do you think I could qualify for this type of loan, and then sitting down and shopping for houses. Right.
I've always heard that there is some metric that's used for income versus mortgage amount and some percentage. Is that a real deal? Is that something that is looked at by mortgage folks?
Yes, very much so. These lenders, they live by statistics. They know the debt to income, what your house payment is going to be, in terms of like the loan to value, all the numbers that oftentimes we kind of just glance over. It's very crucial to their underwriting.
And the underwriting process, it sounds to me, has changed drastically in the last 5 years.
It has. That's one of the funny things about closing is people, they used to come in very happy. Now they come in almost kind of haggard. They feel like, well, have I given DNA? What's next? Kind of thing.
Right.
And so because it used to be the pendulum was so far left of just W-2s and we'll close in a week. Now they actually want to verify you actually are employed.
Right. Well, and that's nice when you've got a guy like Luke, though, that can kind of walk you through that process and explain to you, look, it's just the way things are now. It used to not be this way, but here's what we have to do in order to get our ducks in a row to be able to get this thing closed appropriately.
Let's just assume there are some folks watching who've never purchased a home. All right, kind of walk us through the basic steps of home purchasing. Okay.
Yeah, the first step, as we talked about, is to look at, well, what can you really afford? Talk to a mortgage loan officer and get pre-qualified. Then talk to your realtor, start thinking about neighborhoods, communities, what type house you want, how many features. Then as you're looking, you're going to make an offer on a house, and you're going to negotiate, and then you get to actually look at the home inspection to see, does it really stack up? Going from there, it's just going to be basically going through all the verification of I am employed, here are tax returns, here's all these documentation. Right before closing, a walkthrough, and then you come to my office and you just sign a lot of documents, kind of thing. People kind of feel like a celebrity because they're signing, as everybody's done been in closing, about 100 documents.
Sign your life away, my friend. Sign your life away. All right, so
Yeah.
let's take that process at different stages.
Okay.
Do you recommend that people use a real estate agent in today's market?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so. They're a huge benefit. Obviously, there's no law saying you have to use a realtor, but it's a great benefit. If you're a buyer, they can help you not only negotiate through the process, not only to refer you to experts in the field, but they can also, off analysis, tell you, well, this house right here, if you want to make an offer, you're going to pay too much for it. Why don't you make a lower offer, kind of thing. Also, as a seller, since they've analyzed the market, they can tell you how to best stage your house, what to look for in terms of a buyer. When you feel an offer, don't be insulted. See if you can kind of fill it out before you just say no to it, kind of thing.
Well, and the world of underwriting with the banks has changed in that it used to be that your home would appraise for at least your contract price. In today's world, that's not necessarily true anymore.
Yeah.
And so the cost of your home or the amount that you're paying may actually have to be reduced in order for a closing to take place. Is that fair?
Correct. That's very true. With all the foreclosures that happen, those are deemed as comparable sales by appraisers. And so with that, that's going to, if it's been a sale next to the house within the last 2 or 3 months, that's really going to affect the value of your house.
Another
when it
reason
comes
why
to
a
a
real
lender.
estate agent is important in today's marketplace. And I know firsthand, as we've listed our home, we tried to do it without a real estate agent initially. Now we have a great real estate agent that we're using, and we've seen a significant increase in traffic. I think one of the things that a guy like Luke helps with too, and real estate agents, is being able to hold people's hand through the process. Once you have a contract locked down, there is a lot of details that are required before you can close that home, from the time that you sign your contract until the date of closing, that have to be done, from inspections to financing to environmental issues. I mean, all those things have to be handled.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Real expertise, very valuable. A question we've got here: I've been advised to get pre-approved for a mortgage prior to shopping for a home. What is pre-approval, and how do I go about getting pre-approved?
Yeah. Used to be, 10, 15 years ago, the letter meant nothing. It was just you walk to somebody, they say, oh yeah, I've seen this person. They actually walk and talk, and we'll give them a loan subject to every condition on the planet. Now it actually means something. Now you actually go to the loan officer, whether you talk to them on the phone or whether you email them, and it's just going to be, they're going to pull your credit. You're going to tell them how much money you make, what's your approximate debts, and what assets you have. And they're actually going to say, well, okay, based off these qualifications, you would be approved for up to this loan amount.
Okay. We were talking.
I'm sorry, and one more thing about that, which is crucial about that, is when you're showing that to a realtor or to a seller, they know you're not just the nosy neighbor looking around at the house. You're actually somebody intent on buying a home.
And that process doesn't cost you money. Going to a mortgage banker isn't going to cost you any money. They're going to do that evaluation and the pre-approval process. They're not going to get compensated, and the bank's not going to be compensated until the closing itself.
And does it not, the pre-approval lets you know pretty more concrete what you can afford?
Yes. It does.
Yeah. Especially, if the loan is important
Yeah.
in the purchase. Another question we've got here, we were talking about realtors a moment ago. The question here, I'm concerned about being locked into a listing agreement. What types of terms are usually addressed in that agreement, and what if I find my own buyer? Will I still have to pay a commission?
That's a great question.
It really is. It's pretty funny because it's only about a one-page document. It spells out all the terms. A lot of times people want to ask questions before they actually read what they're actually signing up for. It's just simply, well, what's the list price going to be? What commission would you pay, and what's the duration of that?
Okay.
And there's several different types of listings you can get, where it's an open one, where if you bring your own person in, then you would not have to pay a commission. But most realtors, as they've done all this work marketing the property, staging it for you, figuring out what the value is, they're not going to agree to that kind of thing.
It's negotiable in most listing agreements, but generally the seller of the home is the one that's going to be responsible for paying the commission. Is that
Correct.
fair?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah. All right, time for our first break. Talking about home ownership. Would love your questions on the matter. You can call, text, email those questions, get them into us. We'll be glad to pass them along. As we head to break, a couple of reminders. You can find the firm Hollis, Wright & Couch. Just search that term on Facebook, and also find them on Twitter. It's Hollis_Wright. Stay tuned. More of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, and thank you for watching The Attorneys on Alabama's 13. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never need legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of this show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Now, your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to this show or related to other civil legal matters, call, email, or text us to talk with one of our lawyers. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter to learn about important legal news that could affect you or your family. or simply contact us by going to alabamas13.com and click on the attorneys link. Now, we know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and for watching The Attorneys here on Alabama's 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. We're trying to help you make sure that the biggest investment you will probably make in your life is not the biggest mistake in purchasing a home. Make sure you do it smartly. Some great advice we're getting tonight. When we left off talking about some of the different aspects, we've got a question here that is just interesting. It says, a friend wants to sell me his house. However, he says we don't need any paperwork and that an oral agreement is just as good. I'm concerned, which is good.
Yeah.
Is an oral contract to purchase real estate enforceable?
What could go wrong with that, by the way?
I think the first mistake is this may not be a friend. Yeah. Get new friends.
That's number one.
Yeah.
We try not to make fun of people's questions, but that's a good one. That's a good one. All right.
As we know, in Alabama, a real estate contract to be enforceable must be in writing. It's got to have some basic elements such as the offer and the acceptance, a sales price, where the property actually is, and the time frame on which the closing is supposed to take place.
Yeah.
Well, and the documentation too has to list the actual description of the property and has to be recorded so that other people down the road can determine who the owners were and whether there are any encumbrances on the lot and that kind of thing. So there are a lot of details that you'd have to go through, notwithstanding.
And it is kind of could be humorous there,
Yeah.
But what could go wrong here? I mean, how is the buyer not protected by not having?
Well, pretty
that
much
written
the
agreement?
train's not to go too far down the track because no lender's going to loan any money when there's no written sales contract.
Yeah.
And so doing this is going to be wasting the buyer's time because if the seller doesn't want to perform, there's no way to do it, kind of thing. There's no way
And
to
you
force
may
it.
not get clean title.
Yeah.
That ultimately is the real issue, that if you don't get clean title, you may not actually own what you think you're going to own.
Yeah.
So that could go real wrong.
And the contracts are they designed to make sure that everyone's kind of protected, or does it more just lay out what's your responsibility, what's my responsibility?
Pretty much. In most municipalities like Birmingham, we have the Birmingham area standard sales contract. Tuscaloosa, they have a standard Tuscaloosa contract. It's more or less the local board of realtors puts a contract together, and it's the kind of the standard terms with kind of fill in the blank kind of thing.
Okay.
So there's really no excuse not to use one of those contracts.
Yeah, all righty. That may be the red flag. Another question. I'm trying to sell my house, and I'm aware that there are some issues with the home. What, if any, types of disclosures must I make about the property I am selling?
It's a great issue. Either one of us can fill that problem.
As you know, we're a caveat emptor, state, which is a big fancy, Latin phrase for let the buyer beware. I'm sure you get a lot of phone calls about this.
We do, and we've talked about this on previous shows. The key here is that you do need to beware when you buy, because you are buying a home generally as is. There are some exceptions to that, and it's kind of like let's take a car example. When you buy a car from a dealership, you've probably got warranties that will run with the car. If you buy a car from a used car dealership, there could be warranties, but generally you'll buy the car as is. So if you roll it off the lot and there was no express warranty given or implied warranty given, that vehicle is really it could be a problem. If you got an issue with it, it's probably going to be your responsibility to pay for it because you bought it as is. Caveat emptor is basically the exact same thing, which is you're buying the home with the expectation things could go wrong, and oftentimes with homes, sometimes they do. There are some exceptions to that. Defects in the home that the seller is aware of that relate to health and safety, that with a reasonable inspection the purchaser could not figure out. Things like mold, rodent problems, structural defects come to mind. If they could not have been found through a reasonable inspection, the seller still has an obligation and responsibility to disclose those things to the purchaser. Short of that, generally, I think what you will find is we are a caveat emptor state, which is buyer beware. You're on the hook for what happens at your home once you close on the home. I think that's a fair and reasonable way to kind of analyze it.
I couldn't have said it any better myself.
Yeah. All right. That's why he's here.
Exactly. He is the expert.
His show.
This guy's the expert.
Another question. I'm looking to purchase an existing home and keep hearing things about buyer beware. And we talked about what that means, but how does this actually affect, how does it affect the buyer and how does it affect the process?
Well, pretty much that's one of the crucial reasons why to get a home inspection.
Yeah.
And so, because I mean, I wish I was handy, I'm not great at that. And so if I wanted to buy a house, look at a home inspection to see what structurally is right or wrong with the house. How is the electrical situation going? How is the plumbing going, kind of thing. So much in the environment that we're in now, it's almost like you get a sales contract and in the first 2 weeks or so, there's going to be like an inspection contingency period where you have time to get an inspector out there. And that time, after getting that report back, then you can say, well, do I really want the house, or do I want to try to renegotiate on the price or some of the repairs that are needed to be done because of what the inspection report has showed.
And a lot of times that's driven by the banks in today's world, where the banks will mandate certain things have to be fixed or certain inspections need to take place before they're willing to front money at a closing to allow somebody to purchase the home. So the banks are really driving that. The closing lawyer is right in the middle of it, and he is the one making sure that that all interests are protected. But at the end of the day, the banks are driving a lot of that.
Does that apply also for new homes? Because the question here is someone just bought a new home, a newly built home, already having problems and just curious as to their options and rights.
Yeah. In Alabama, for new homes, new construction, we have the builders have to give an implied warranty of habitability kind of thing. And that lasts for several years. Because that's kind of a vague thing, pretty much every single home builder that has any kind of smarts in the state of Alabama is going to be giving a 1-year limited home warranty. That basically anything goes wrong in the house within a year, that builder will fix it. Now obviously because of appliances, the appliances are going to have their own warranties going to transfer kind of thing. But as I'm sure you probably get phone calls as well, all that 1-year home warranty always has arbitration clause in there.
That's right. We have had shows before from a different perspective on whether buying home warranties at the point of sale or at the closing is a good thing or a bad thing. I think the general consensus of those that have spoken to that issue on our show have indicated that home warranties have their place in the world. We're talking about purchasing third-party home warranty claims. They have their place in the world, but you need to make sure you read and understand what your obligations are to make sure that's still in place and enforced, and what they're going to pay for. Is that,
absolutely.
You agree with that? Okay.
And especially one of those things, I hate to speak ill of any kind of home warranty companies, but oftentimes they want to say on there, well, how can we figure out a way that we did not cover that?
Yeah. So be careful. Be careful.
Time for our second break of the evening. Coming up, the final segment of the attorneys, but still an opportunity for you to get your questions to us. Call, text, email. Find the firm Hollis, Wright & Couch. Just search that on Facebook, Hollis_Wright. You'll find them on Twitter. Plenty of ways for you to communicate with the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. Stay tuned. The final segment of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm Tyler Vale with the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. In court, attorneys are not allowed to tell juries certain things. For example, we cannot talk about a defendant's net worth, meaning the defendant's ability, resources, or insurance they may have to pay a verdict. In this week's Legal 411, we're answering the question, why can't lawyers talk about a defendant's net worth to a jury? Here's why. Rule 403 of the Alabama Rules of Evidence states, although relevant, evidence may be excluded if its probative value is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice, confusion on the issues, or misleading the jury, or by considerations of undue
house, transferring it to the buyer kind of thing. And so that all happens at one office kind of thing. It's kind of like an iceberg. There's been 5,000 things happening below the surface kind of thing, which you only see just the tip of it when you're actually at the closing table.
Generally, the closing lawyer is paid through the closing and it's shared by the buyer and the seller. Is that generally the way it works?
That's correct. That's correct.
And is it the responsibility of the purchaser to get or the seller for that matter, to get a closing lawyer, or does the bank generally kind of drive who they're going to do the closing with? How does that work?
If the buyer and the seller don't have a preference, then the lender will often, the lender or the realtor will kind of suggest, kind of thing.
At the end of the day, having a closing lawyer involved at the early stage is probably pretty important, don't you think?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest things that we see a problem of. People don't get us involved, don't get title companies involved, don't get realtors involved early enough in the process. You need to be able to kind of head the problems off before they become a real problem. If I'm involved a month when the house, let's say I get involved when the month that the house is listed, I see the title search, we up before they come to the closing.
And what people probably don't understand is if they get you involved earlier, they're not paying any more for your services.
Correct.
You're going to get compensated at the closing table as part of the closing costs by the buyer and the seller. It's going to happen regardless of who they hire. They're going to have to pay for the lawyer, but you can kind of lead, guide, and direct them through the entire process.
Correct. If I'm a seller and I've had a judgment against me, for example, I didn't quite tell my realtor, by the way, I've been sued and I have a judgment that's going to have to be cleared at closing kind of thing. If we find out that at the last minute, that's going to become a problem.
Yep.
And it's going to stop the closing.
If the viewers are closing on a home or they are trying to buy a home, they need to simply contact us with all the ways they can get in contact with us on the screen. We will get you in touch with a guy like this that can hold your hand through the process and make sure it's closed appropriately. Yeah. That's the key.
Save you a heartache and a whole lot of money, for sure. A question on closings. Will I know prior to the closing what all the costs will be?
Well,
should there be a surprise at all at closing?
There'll be, there's always there's an estimate given. In the old days, there were a lot of surprises, and that's kind of all the problems in the industry that's had to be cleaned up for the past couple of years. Nowadays, by the time you apply for the loan, within 3 business days, the loan officer is going to be giving you a good faith estimate. That's going to give you a hard number what the lender's costs are, and a very close estimate on what the third-party fees are. And so at the same time, the loan officer is going to give you an estimate of how much cash you would bring into closing. And then from that kind of drives the settlement statement. The HUD-1 settlement statement is the spreadsheet form signed at closing, executed by everybody, talking about what the numbers, what the final costs are. That gets to the buyers about 24 hours before closing. They have plenty of time to review that, and so they don't walk in shocked at what this number actually is.
One thing I do want to mention, we talked earlier about the potential for a home warranty that one can purchase at closing, and I think we both kind of gave opinions about that. We've had it on previous shows too. One thing I want people to remember is this: if they do buy the home warranty at the closing, whether it's a new home or an existing home that they're buying, caveat emptor style, if you will, they need to make sure that they read the document and determine what their responsibilities are. For example, there may be a responsibility, let's take a new home, that you have to monitor within the manufacturer specifications the HVAC system and have it inspected and have work done on it over a 5-year period in order for you to be able to get reimbursed if there is a defect with the HVAC system down the road. And the point I'm making there, that's just one simple example. Make sure you understand as a homeowner, if you do at closing get one of these home warranties, that you understand you have some obligations too to make sure the warranty is applicable down the road if you need to use it.
Okay, less than 3 minutes remaining, but another question here about the home inspection has been complete, issues have been found, now what? Does the seller have to fix the items? Can it get out of the contract? Those sort of things.
It's almost to the point of you're almost negligent if you don't have an inspection contingency in the sales contract, to be honest with you. Because it's the thing where you're buying a pig in a poke if you don't look at it. Why not give yourself the chance to actually look and investigate, see what's going on? So with that, most contracts are going to have that contingency. You as the buyer have the option of, well, seller, why don't you fix this? If this issue that creates a problem in the house where it's an uninhabitable house, why not get it fixed? At the same time, okay, if you don't fix it, we can reduce the sales price, or I can walk and get my earnest money back.
Okay. And one other quick question. Mortgage company requiring an appraisal of the property. What is a property appraisal? How's it happen, and how's that going to affect the sales price?
Yeah, many of what the things what the lender does is for their benefit, not yours.
Right.
The appraisal is not for your benefit. The lender's going to loan money, and their collateral is going to be the house.
Right.
And so because of that, we've got to figure out what is that house truly worth. So the licensed appraiser is going to go out, take pictures of the property, and then compare that to other houses in the neighborhood that have sold in the last 6 months to figure out what really is the value of the house, kind of thing.
Right.
And so with that, they're only going to loan a certain amount percentage of what that appraised value is.
Yeah, we're almost out of time, but time for a closing comment from you. What do you want to be sure folks take away from the program tonight?
The important thing is to, I hate to say it, but think before you're doing something. Get as professionals involved. If you have questions, ask the questions. Don't come to professionals after you've already made the mistake.
Yeah, Josh?
I'm going to end where we started. It may be the largest asset that you ever own. Make sure that you dot the I's and cross the T's to know that you have proper title, that you've got a home that is safe and habitable, and that you've used the professionals necessary to make sure that it is the asset that you want it to be on a moving forward basis.
Yeah.
It's worth the time.
There are plenty of cautionary tales that about folks taking the shortcut does not turn out well. Appreciate the time. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good to see you. Good to see you as well. We appreciate you spending your Sunday evening with us as we wrap up. Ways you can call, text, email the firm of Hollis, Wright, and Couch. Find them again on Facebook as well as Twitter. We appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week right here on The Attorney.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, and Couch.